Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 6, Q&A with Jackson. At the time of this recording, I am currently about to teach the last day of Competitive Edge Winter Camp coming up tomorrow, as well as just finished teaching up at the TCK Winter Camp right before I flew down to Competitive Edge Winter Camp. Both camps have been awesome. TCK, I know, is still going on at the time that I'm recording. I know by the time this is published, both of those camps will be done with. But I just wanted to take a moment and say, first of all, thank you to Johnny Tension for having me out to the TCK Winter Camp. That's always an awesome experience with tons of energy. And then flying down to the CE Winter Camp, the Competitive Edge Winter Camp, which I host alongside the Presley Brothers and Mackenzie Emery. That's an awesome experience as well. I love the energy of winter camps. I love everybody trying to get prepped for the new season. And I just love being able to inspire people and help people be better. And that leads me to one of the reasons that I wanted to do this episode discussion for today, which is the question and answer session. You know, I didn't want the first several episodes of the podcast to be all about me, but I do think it's important that my viewers understand who I am. My listeners understand a little bit of my background, where I come from, why I do what I do. So I wanted to, the first 5 episodes were some topics that didn't really have much to do with me. And then now as we kind of shift to this one, I want to just kind of use this Q&A to address the things that you guys were most interested in about me and tell a little bit of my story so that you guys have a better understanding of my perspective moving forward as we get into whatever topics the podcast takes us to. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right into it with our first question. This was submitted by Braden Kaplan. And they ask, what made you start karate? What better question to start with, right? The first reason that I started karate was because my first grade teacher was a black belt, and she actually did a concrete breaking demonstration at a spelling bee at my elementary school, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And so there was like a fall carnival that was coming up shortly after that, and at that fall carnival there was a silent auction for a 2-week introductory course at a local taekwondo school. And so my parents signed up for that silent auction, wound up winning it. And then I went to that 2-week introductory course, just like so many kids that start the martial arts do. A lot of martial arts schools use that format. And I absolutely fell in love with it. The funny thing is that I actually was not very good at it in the beginning. Like, I remember, I didn't know this at the time, but later on I found out that when I was a yellow belt, which in our system was the second rank that you get, when I was a yellow belt, my parents actually went in and had a meeting with the instructor saying, our kid's not looking too good out there. He's not keeping up with the others. We think we're going to pull him out. And my original instructor was like, no, keep him in the program. It'll be okay. This takes time. And lo and behold, I grew to get my black belt and become the competitor that I am today. But that's how it all started. It was just a regular 2-week introductory course. And my first inspiration was my first grade school teacher, who happened to be, I believe she was a second or third degree black belt at the time that I was in class with her. Her name was Karen Armstrong. She was a huge inspiration for me starting the martial arts. And that brings us to question number 2 from Sandra Muscle, which is, what motivated you to get into competing, and what advice do you have for those wanting to compete? So starting with that first question, what motivated me to get into competing? So I started competing at like small inter-school tournaments within my system. I'm from Kentucky, so the system that I had was primarily schools in Kentucky as well. So what I would do is there was this inter-school tournament that happened in Louisville every year where all of the schools from that taekwondo system would compete. But again, it's a closed circuit. It was just the people learning that style. And so when you have that situation, it's great from camaraderie and building kind of teamwork skills with other people in your own style, things like that. But it is limited in the amount of talent that there is because you're limited in the amount of people that there are. So I actually wound up getting some wins at my very first inter-school tournament like that. There wasn't even a weapons division. I think I won the forms division and the breaking division, and I took like second or third in the sparring division. And that was my first introduction to a tournament, was having that success. And I think that's what initially got me hooked onto it. And that success was not because I was very good. That success was purely because I was in the right age group at the right time and I happened to be just good enough to win. I'm not saying that I showed up and I was good right off the bat, because even at that point, I was still not very good. I was maybe a green belt. So this was maybe 6 months or so into my training, maybe 8 months, something like that. And then from competing in those inter-school tournaments, there were kids from other schools that had competed, other schools within my system that had competed in some open regional tournaments on circuits like the RSKC, which used to be a huge regional circuit back in the day. I think there's still RSKC sanctioned tournaments, but anyway. So I started competing on the RSKC, and one of the biggest RSKC tournaments was the Bluegrass Nationals, which also happened to be a NASCA tournament hosted in Louisville, Kentucky. And so in 2005, I believe it was 2005, 2006, around that time, I went to my very first Bluegrass Nationals, and that's what got me hooked on NASCA competition. And just for perspective, when I went to my first Bluegrass Nationals, I got dead last in every division, right? So I was not very good. I was competing in weapons. I had started learning bow at the time, but I was getting my butt kicked. And even when I moved into black belts, I would still not do very well. I was competing against some great competitors like Dre Rice, a young Austin Crane. I was competing against guys like that, and it took me time to kind of get my wings and figure out what I needed to do to be successful. So it's not like I showed up and was a really good regional competitor and went on to be a really good national competitor right away. Those are things that take time. I had to develop my craft. I had to learn from my competitors, and it was definitely a process. But what initially got me motivated to compete was just hearing from other people that I was competing with in those inter-school tournaments. And then my advice for people wanting to compete is to not be afraid to compete against the best. The best thing in the world that ever happened to me was going to that first Bluegrass Nationals, not because that introduced me to the NASCA circuit and to world competition, but because I got my butt kicked when I went there. Because I got to see great competitors compete against great competitors like Dre Rice. Because I got to watch competitors like Lauren Carney, like Matt Emig. Because I got to watch great competitors, I learned so much just from that one experience, and I was so inspired to try to reach that level. So there's no reason to be afraid and go out there and compete against the best competition, even if you know that you're probably going to lose. Losing is not the end of the world. Sometimes you learn the most when you lose. So my number one advice is when you go to your first tournament, you should go there just to have fun and try to learn as much as you can. You shouldn't be going there trying to win the very first tournament that you go to. So absolutely go to a tournament, no matter how small it is, give it a try, and then kind of work your way up and get yourself in there with some of the best competitors at national and world tournaments so that you can learn from them, you can watch them compete, and you can be inspired by them. And that brings me to my next question. Now, this is actually two questions that I thought were close enough that we kind of put them together. These come from Jeremiah Vapor and Emil Goli. And they ask, is it okay to fail sometimes? And are you scared before you compete? Answer to the first question, yes, it is absolutely okay to fail. And I'm going to explain that. And answer to the second question, and this one might surprise a few people, I'm actually not scared at all when I compete. Here I define scared as nervous. When I go out there and compete, and this has been like this since I was a little kid, I don't get nervous at all. And I'm going to tell you guys why it's okay to fail and why it is that I don't get nervous and why you shouldn't get nervous either. The number one reason that it's okay to fail is that there's always going to be another karate tournament. Like if something horrible happens at karate tournament 1, there's going to be another karate tournament the next weekend or in the next 2 weeks or in the next month. There's going to be another karate tournament for you to go to and try to redeem yourself. And on top of that, let's say you wanted to win one specific tournament. Like you wanted to win your division at the U.S. Open so bad. The U.S. Open's going to happen next year too. So don't be afraid of the fact that but I really want this particular tournament, because even if something bad happens, you can train really hard, come back the next year and try to right anything that went wrong the first time. And then as far as, the nervousness and why I don't get scared or nervous before I compete, in my opinion, there's 3 reasons that you should ever compete. Your number one reason is to go have fun. The number one reason that you should go compete is to go out there and have a good time because you're passionate about what you do and you love what you do. The second reason would be a little bit more in depth than that, and that would be the pursuit of greatness or success. Maybe you want to compete. Obviously, you want to have fun with it if you're pursuing greatness in that particular sport. But it's not all fun and games when you're competing with this quest of trying to be one of the best in the world, trying to become a world champion, trying to be considered one of the greatest of your generation or be one of the greatest of all time. If you have lofty goals like that, you're going to have a balance of when you can have fun with it and when you need to really hunker down and be serious about what you're doing, be serious about your training. But still, neither of those things are things that you should be scared of. You certainly shouldn't be scared of having fun, and there's no reason to be scared of trying to achieve greatness. Because if you aim as high as you can and you aim for your highest goal, even if you miss that goal by a little bit, you're still probably going to end up in a pretty good situation. And then the third reason that people compete, and this one's more secondary, once you compete, once you have some success, the third reason that people would compete is to inspire others, whether it's inspiring others to compete or just inspiring others to set big goals and be successful in life in general. That's the only other reason that you should compete. So you should only compete if you're doing it to have fun, if you're doing it because you have goals and you want to try to be one of the best, or let's say you've already achieved some things. Why would you keep competing? The reason that you keep competing is to inspire others so that we continually have a new generation of martial artists coming in. And I'll tell you that I've competed for all three of those reasons. At the very beginning, I was competing because I loved it and it was fun. And then I realized that I had gotten pretty skilled and I was pretty talented. And so I set off on this quest to be the very best that I could be and to try to be the best weapons competitor in the world. And then on top of that, now that I've had that success and I've been there, done that, if you will, the reason that I still compete is A, because I still love what I do. I still have a lot of fun. And B, because I absolutely love seeing that next generation, those kids be inspired when I teach a seminar, when I go out and compete, when I come off the mat and give them my medal or my trophy or whatever. Those are the best moments to me. Those are the things that I'm going to hold on to forever and ever. And that's why I still compete. And that's why you should never be scared to compete, because none of those things are scary. Now we're moving on to our next question. We're kind of shifting topics here just a little bit. We have a question from Jordan, who I couldn't find Jordan's last name, but they were on Instagram. And Jordan asks, what tricks took you the longest to learn? So there's one specific trick, and it's not that it took me the longest to learn, but it's a trick that I would say one of the big things that I like to do when I do bow staff tricks is I like the vast majority of the tricks that I do in my form to be tricks that I was either the first person to do in competition or tricks that I just completely created myself. And so this is a brief story about one of the first tricks that I completely created by myself, and it's a trick that I call the orbiter. Now, what the orbiter is if you know what a zero gravity is, a zero gravity is a bow staff throw where you wrap the bow around your back, you're throwing the bow up from behind your back, and for a zero gravity, the bow rotates horizontally over your head. The way an orbiter works is you wrap your arm around your back the same way, you're throwing the bow from behind your back, and you're still getting horizontal rotation. But instead of the bow rotating above your head, the goal of the orbiter is to have the bow actually rotate all the way around your body as it's floating up. So I'm throwing down if my bow's in my right hand, I'm throwing down by my left hip because I've wrapped that right hand around my back. The bow's traveling up my body and around my body, and then I reach that right hand across to catch the other end of my bow over my left shoulder. So it goes from my left hip around my body and getting higher so that I catch on the left shoulder, so the bow orbits all the way around my body. If you take one of my seminars or if you join the Flow System, shameless plug, you'll get to learn how to do the orbiter and kind of how that actually works. But as far as we're talking about time frame and the longest to learn, so the orbiter was an idea that I had as early as even like 2008. 2008 is when I first started kind of thinking about it. And then I'd say the first time that I actually caught it and I was like, okay, this is a move that I can actually do, would have been in 2009. I still remember at the WK World Championships in Spain in 2009, we had a team training session and I was on that team with Corey Lutkus, who was one of my idols at the time, still is one of my idols. And I remember showing Corey the orbiter and him actually, telling me that it was cool and him trying it a few times. We played around with it and stuff like that. So I know that I could do the trick in 2009 because I specifically remember going over that with Corey. But then I did not compete with that move in competition until 2012. So I actually did not throw that move in a form until 2012. And here's why. If you're going to put a move in your form, especially if it is a move that you have made up, that you believe has a chance to be a move that people do for years and years after that, there's two reasons that you want to maybe wait before you throw it. Number one, you want to make sure that that move is 10 out of 10 consistent to where you're going to catch it every time, because you don't want to go for that move the first time and then it be a mistake or a drop, because then that can start a pattern. You start to worry about it too much because you've never done it in a competition before, and that situation just gets worse and worse. So you want to make sure you've got it 100% 10 out of 10 before you try to throw it. And then the other thing is, you should never have to throw out some crazy trick or a brand new trick for no reason. Like, a lot of people talk about how, like, when you go out there and do a form, you should just throw everything and have a good time and try to run the best form that you can. But if you're trying to have a long, successful career with sustained success and win over the course of multiple seasons, win multiple world championships, you've got to learn how to hold on to some of those tricks. By 2009, I had already been on stage at NASCAR tournaments. I had already won world championships in other leagues. And so I didn't feel any urgency to just start throwing that move right away. I won my first NASCAR overall grand in 2010, still didn't need to pull out that brand new move yet. 2011 was kind of my breakout season, still didn't need to throw that new move yet. I held on to it until 2012 when I moved up into the 14 to 17 age group. I'm up against bigger, stronger competitors than I used to be against, and that gave me the necessity to start throwing that brand new move. So the reason that one took the longest wasn't necessarily because I was learning it the longest. I had the idea for a while, but it was perfecting the technique and also finding the right time to actually throw that technique. And speaking of learning new techniques and throwing new techniques, we're going to slide on into an advertisement here for the Flow Weapons Training System. The Flow Weapons Training System is a bow staff and comma curriculum designed by yours truly, Jackson Rudolph, with Mackenzie Emery as the commas instructor, in coordination with the Martial Arts Industry Association, designed to bring elite level bow staff and comma training into your martial arts school. Talk to your instructor today. The Flow Weapons Training System is the only weapon system that also offers instructor training modules to help your instructors, the staff, and the black belts at the school learn how to better teach the actual weapons techniques to the students. Talk to your instructor about joining the Flow Weapons Training System today. Visit theflowsystem.tv for more details. And now rolling right back into our questions. My next question comes from Sam Broomy, and his question is, what was your favorite season of competition? And this one's really tough, because I have two. I'm going to cheat. I have two favorite seasons of competition, and for two different reasons. Both of them very successful, and that's the primary reason, but the two different kinds of successful. 2011 was my first favorite season because 2011 was my breakout season. 2010 was good. 2010, I won the overall grands at the Compete National with my CMX bow form, and then I went on to win the Gold Medallion Challenge, which was one of the last years that the Compete Nationals did that with that bow form as well. And that division was stacked. I'll remember that division for the rest of my life. It was my CMX bow form against Micah Carnes' CMX form, which was incredible, against Shaheen Jahanvash's traditional double sword form. So it was an absolutely stacked division, and I was really, really excited to win that and have that be my first big win. And then I also won the U.S. Open in 2010, but those were really my only two big highlights in 2010. 2011, it was my last year at 13 under, so I was at the top of my age division. I come out and I win the first 7 tournaments in 2011. I believe I finished that season with like 10 overall grands out of like 12 tournaments that I attended. One of them I lost in the runoffs because of a stumble, and then another one, I think I dropped on stage. I think I dropped on stage at Diamonds that year, and that was my only other loss. Something like that. So 2011 was my breakout season, and 2011 was kind of where I had arrived. That's where I think that I got on Team Paul Mitchell's radar, because they picked me up in kind of mid-2012. So I think 2011 was my kind of coming out party as far as being one of the top competitors. And then another favorite season of competition of mine was this season. I loved 2019. You know, in 2019, I won 11 overalls in 11 tournaments, which is a goal that I've always set for myself. You know, my mentality when I go into a tournament nowadays is I want to show up and I want to leave with a weapons overall in my hand when I leave the tournament. And I was able to do that pretty well this year, winning 11 overalls in 11 tournaments, so I'm really happy with that. I was able to secure wins at all of the big 3 this year. I won a Warrior Cup, I was able to win the U.S. Open, and then I won the Traditional Weapons Diamond Ring. And I love winning with traditional weapons too, so being able to win a Traditional Weapons Diamond Ring. It wasn't the first time that I had done it, but it's always fun for me when I get to do that. And the number one reason that 2019 has been one of my favorite seasons is, especially at this stage in my career where I've achieved a lot of those big highlight wins that I want to achieve, and I've done a lot of the tricks that I want to do and things like that, and I'll still be coming out with new tricks and all that. But at this stage in my career, I find myself just walking into the ring to have a good time. like literally running forms. I feel that, I've kind of created the image of myself that I wanted, and I've kind of risen to the point that I wanted to get to. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to continue to try to push those boundaries, and I'm going to continue trying to make myself better. But I think that what's allowed me to try to make myself better is the fact that now when I go out and compete, the only thing that I'm thinking about is having a good time and inspiring others. And that is something that there's so much joy that fills my heart to be at a karate tournament right now and to be running a bow form in front of people. It's a unique feeling. It's hard to describe because of how unique and how special of a feeling that is, but it's a feeling that I hope that everybody that competes gets to experience, is just truly going out there to just enjoy running a form. Next question. This one comes from Joseph Brewski. Have you ever competed with a weapon besides bow? The answer is yes, but also no. So I've never competed in like an official NASCA division with any other weapon besides bow. Like when it's time for me to, be serious, get down to business, I go with what my best is, and that's always been bow. However, there is a division that used to happen at the New England Open, which is the tournament promoted by the owner of Team Straight Up and G-Force Weapons, Joe Greenhall, which was called Superforms. And the entire purpose of Superforms, where there was all these different types of forms on this big wheel, like a Wheel of Fortune type wheel. It could be soft style forms, it could be hard style traditional forms, or it could be any of the weapons. You could get kamas, chucks, sword, bow, whatever, right? And so you would spin the wheel, and then whatever category the wheel landed on, you would have to do a 30-second performance of whatever form's category that was. And in those divisions, I think I did it 3 or 4 times. I wound up winning the super forms twice. And in the process of winning those two, I did do performances with both nunchucks and kamas. In fact, one of the times that I won, the final performance that I did was a kama form in which I did the first throw, triple spin, and catch of a kama ever to be done in competition. Granted, it wasn't official competition because it was a super forms division, which there was prizes on the line, so it was the real deal. It just wasn't for NASCA points. So technically, yes, I have competed with other weapons. I've competed with kamas and chucks in the super forms division, and a lot of people don't know about this. But bow was actually the last weapon that I learned. Chucks was my first weapon, followed by kamas. Then I learned eskrima. Then I learned sword, and then I learned bow after all of that. So I still study and practice all weapons. I love training weapons in general, not just bow. But kamas and chucks were the only two other ones that I had competed with. Moving on to the next question. This is another one where it was kind of 2 questions that were similar, so I wanted to kind of fuse them together. These questions come from Chrissy Boyer and Orion Yang, and they ask, what's your best martial arts memory / what's your proudest moment in the martial arts? And I have a couple of them that I want to share with you guys. For the memories, I have one that's kind of a personal memory, and I have another that's kind of a memory dependent upon another competitor. The first one is getting on Paul Mitchell. I mean, when I got the call Friday, July 13th, 2012 at the U.S. Open, that is a day that I will never forget. I've told the story of me getting on Paul Mitchell before, so I won't go into all the details of, how I got the phone call and the circumstances and all that. But literally, Paul Mitchell is all that I ever wanted. I still remember being at my very first U.S. Open in 2006 and watching Paul Mitchell competitors and literally telling my dad, that is the team that I want to be on. That is who I want to represent. I bleed black and white. I love my team. I love my teammates. I love my coaching staff. Everything about Paul Mitchell, always have love, always will love. JPM for life. So my number one memory is getting that call to be on JPM, because that was when I realized that I had a chance to achieve everything that I wanted to in the martial arts. And then the memory that's dependent upon another competitor was actually the 2014 Warrior Cup. Yeah, I'm going to say it was 2000. It was either 13 or 14. I'm pretty sure it was 2014, but I could be wrong on that, so don't quote me on that. But anyway, so it was a Warrior Cup. I had already won. It had to have been 2014 because I had already won 2 Warrior Cups. I won 2012, 2013, and then this was 2014, and I was still in the junior division. So this is going up for a junior Warrior Cup. I was the 14 to 17 representative. The way that they do the Warrior Cups is the 14 to 17 for the Weapons Warrior Cup, that is, for the juniors. The 14 to 17 overall weapons winner competes against the 13 and under overall weapons winner, which in this case was Jake Presley. And I've had a close relationship with Jake for a really long time. Jake was one of those that was never officially a student, but he was, for a while he was a protege of mine, and I kind of took him under my wing a little bit, was showing him a few things and hyping him up as he would compete and things like that. And we've helped each other grow a lot, especially, doing sync together the past 4 or 5 years. So Jake has always been someone that I'm very close with and have always supported and wanted to see him do his best. And so at this particular Warrior Cup, it wound up being me against Jake. And we had competed against each other before, but it was like other people in the division in a runoff, and I was a lot older than he was, so it wasn't like a Warrior Cup where it's one of the most prestigious awards in all of sport karate, and you walk up on stage together and you look across from each other, and it's time to compete against each other. It was never that type of a format. And so I had convinced myself from the time that I saw Jake win, and then I had obviously won my overall, I had convinced myself, no, I'm going to go for broke, I'm going to run my whole form, and I am going to win a 3rd straight Warrior Cup. I'm going to go for it. And then all that changed, because what happens is, we walk up on stage, and Jake and I walk to the center of the ring, and we bow to each other, hug and all that. And the last thing that Jake says to me before, and I was going first, I believe, and so the last thing Jake says to me before he walks off stage and leaves me on stage from the bowing for me to do my form is he looks at me and he goes, "Hey, don't hold back on me." And my heart melted in that moment. You guys, this is not grown Jake like he is right now. This is not man-child, strong Jake. This is cute little Jake before he grew up. You know what I mean? And so he says that to me and my heart just melts, right? And it's man, you telling me not to hold back makes me want to hold back. Now, I'm not saying that I held back or anything like that, but what I am saying is that there was that moment where I was tonight might be Jake's night. You know what I mean? It was one of those things where Jake said that, and I was it might be Jake's time. It might be Jake's time to get his Warrior Cup tonight. So I go out there, and I do a good form. I didn't do any of my crazy upgrades. I think it was the same form that I did in my overall. So I go out there, and I do my thing. But then Jake goes up there. Jake runs an awesome form. His music cuts out in the middle of it. The crowd goes crazy when his music cuts out. And it was just an awesome moment for Jake. Jake winds up winning. I think it was a 4-3 split. It was a close score. Jake winds up winning. And I was just so happy for him in that moment. We hugged, told each other we loved each other. And then there's a series of, in my opinion, to me, they're iconic pictures where just because of the emotion of that moment and everything, I actually pick Jake up and put Jake on my shoulders, parade Jake around the stage a little bit. I help him carry the Warrior Cup off stage. And that was just a really cool moment for the two of us. So that's a really kind of wholesome memory that I hold on to. And then to address, because the memories are different than my proudest moment. My proudest moment's probably my biggest career accomplishment in the martial arts. And that happened at this year's U.S. Open. And I actually didn't even know this until after the fact. So when I won the U.S. Open this year in 2019, I didn't even realize the significance of it. But then watching the broadcast afterwards and hearing what Mike Chat and the other announcers were saying was when I won the individual men's weapons world championship at the U.S. Open this year, I became the winningest men's weapons competitor in the history of the U.S. Open with 5 synchronized weapons titles and 9 individual ISKA weapons world championships, giving me a total of 14 weapons world championships at the U.S. Open. And that's just mind-blowing because and I don't even mean mind-blowing as an accomplishment. I mean, to me personally, that is mind-blowing. I still remember, I already mentioned it in the podcast once, being at that U.S. Open in 2006 and seeing what I wanted so bad and how it would have made my life to just win the U.S. Open once. And then I win one in 2010. And then I come back and I win another in 2011. And then I come back and I'm in 14-17. I'm against bigger, stronger kids, but I get on Paul Mitchell that year anyway, and I win in 2012. And then I win in 2013, and I tie the record for the most individual titles won in a row with 4 titles. And then winning the 5 sync titles, 1 with Kyle Montagna, 4 of them with Jake Presley, and then now being in the adult division and winning 3 consecutive weapons titles. It's just completely overwhelming coming from, a kid from a small town in Kentucky that, historically isn't a big martial arts state. We've had our great competitors, Marty Eubanks, Brian Ruth, and the likes. but historically not a big martial arts state. Nothing like Florida, Texas, New York, California, nothing like that. And to come from that and to, just dream of winning one U.S. Open and to now be, the men's weapons competitor that's won the most in history. I mean, it's so humbling, and I feel so blessed. And that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of about my career at this moment when it comes to strictly competition-wise, outside of teaching and all of those things. A couple of more questions here. I know we're coming up on the 30-minute mark, and we're going to do a quick story time and a quick tournament talk here at the end too. But I want to get to these last two questions. First one actually comes from the ProMac Regional Circuit. Their Instagram page submitted a question, and they said, what do you look for when judging a division? I have judged at a few ProMac tournaments. I judge when NASCA tournaments need me to help out a little bit, and I enjoy judging. I enjoy being able to help people out, help people understand what they can do better to help them perform better on their scorecard, things like that. So I'm going to go through kind of the three things that I pay attention to in order when I'm judging. The first thing is the martial arts technique in terms of cleanliness, power, and speed. The technique has to be clean and effective. It's got to be strong. And if you're doing those techniques cleanly with a whole lot of speed, that's just extra bonus points. So the first most important thing to me is your basic martial arts technique. And I don't mean speed and cleanliness of tricks. I'm talking about specifically striking, stances, chop punches, forward strikes with your bow, cuts with your kamas. I'm looking for the actual martial arts technique first. Then after that, I'm looking at difficulty, and that goes for both traditional and creative divisions. For creative and extreme divisions, that's easy, right? You're judging the difficulty based on how difficult the flips are for extreme weapons or extreme forms. For the creative divisions, especially creative weapons, I'm looking at how difficult the weapons techniques are. If I'm judging an extreme or a musical weapons division, because it is a weapons division, I'm going to be judging the weapons tricks as a little bit more valuable than the regular flipping tricks because it is a weapons division. So in creative and extreme, those are pretty self-explanatory, right? A triple spin is better than a double spin is better than a single spin, a behind the back catch is better than not doing a behind the back catch, so on and so forth. However, the key thing that I said there is I also look for difficulty in traditional. Under NASCA rules and traditional weapons, as long as you use traditional movements, you can make up your own form. So difficulty comes in the form of complexity. Complexity of your strike combos. Are you showing off leg strength with horse stances and low turning cross stances at the end of your form? Is there a balance move where you risk stumbling? Is there a jump spin where you risk stumbling? That's difficulty in a traditional weapons form. And in a traditional form, judging by difficulty of the kata that you choose to run. Shotanyara Kusanku is known as a popular but also difficult kata that's more difficult than a what could be considered a lower level form like a Sanseiru or something like that, right? So I'm also judging based on the difficulty of the traditional form that might be being run, just based on the complexity of the kata. And then third, and this is the most important thing when you've got two martial artists that both execute well, they're both fast, they're both powerful, they both have great difficulty, it comes down to who wants it more. And a judge tells who wants it more, or at least I tell who wants it more, by performance value and your intensity. Can I see it in your eyes? Can I tell in your posture that you're confident, that you know you can do this? Can I tell that you want it more than the guy that you're competing against or the girl that you're competing against? Can I tell that you want it the most? And that's the third thing that I'm looking for, and that's the deciding factor when you've got two great martial artists going up against one another. And then moving on to the last question that we are covering for the Q&A session tonight, or today. This is going to be from Carla, and then forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, but I believe it's Mendizabal. Carla Mendizabal. And the question is, how do we know when/where upcoming seminars are going to be? This is an excellent question. First and foremost, stay tuned on all my social media platforms. Instagram, Jackson Rudolph 1, Twitter, Jackson Rudolph 2, and then on Facebook, you guys can just friend my personal account. It's a public personal account, so I post everything on there as well. My Instagram is probably where I'm the most active with announcing seminars, things like that. So that's the number one thing. Stay tuned on my social media platforms. Also on Snapchat. I'm trying to do better on Snapchat. I really never log into Snapchat, but I know that Snapchat is like something that has gained popularity as being another social media platform for, putting stuff out there and everything. So I'm going to work on my Snapchat, just my name, Jackson Rudolph. So that's another. I don't use that one as much. If you want to make sure that you're getting all the latest info, follow my Instagram at Jackson Rudolph 1. And then when you do find out that I may be doing a seminar somewhere, and it's not like an open invitation winter camp, if it's just like a seminar at a particular school, what you need to do in that situation is contact me first, shoot me a message and ask me, is it an open seminar or a closed seminar? Most school owners open up their school to anybody that wants to come in, but some like to keep it private for their students so they get a more personal experience. So contact me first, and I can ask the seminar host if they're going to allow outside people to come in and learn as well. And if so, I can connect you with the host and we can look at getting you involved in the seminar as well. And the other thing to remember is any martial arts school can host me for a seminar. All you have to do is shoot me a message. If you're just a student listening to the podcast, tell your instructor, hey, I'd love to learn some bow staff skills. Could we have Jackson out for a seminar? They can look up the details, shoot me a message, Facebook, Instagram, any of those social media platforms that I mentioned, and we can get a seminar set up anywhere. Now, there are obviously some fees that are going to go into that. One of the questions that I actually got this week that I didn't want to go into in depth is, do you get paid? So yes, for seminars, there's a fee, and you have to pay for travel and lodging and stuff like that. But those are all details that I work out with the school owner. But yeah, I'll go and teach anywhere. So if you guys want me to come into your school, let your instructor know. If you're an instructor or a school owner listening to this, feel free to shoot me a message and we can get that set up. So that's just one little question. Good question, Carla, that I want to make sure that I address for you guys, so you guys know that you guys have access to training with me whenever you guys want it. Now, before we get into story time, we're going to throw in another quick little advertisement here for Century Signature Weapons. Century has 3 lines of Signature Series weapons featuring my very own bow staffs, as well as kamas by Mackenzie Emery and nunchucks by Danny Etkin. All 3 of us are world champions and members of the prestigious Team Paul Mitchell Karate. Our weapons are designed to be at the same specs that we use in competition, and they ensure quality, manufactured by G-Force Weapons and sold through Century. Century's signature weapons are top-of-the-line quality. If you want to get you some, go ahead and head on over to centurymartialarts.com and search any of our names in the search bar. I also have some other signature products, including a signature bow staff carrying case to carry your bows in, as well as the Signature Series Trainer bow staff, which is a bow staff that is designed. It has specific grips that you can put your hands on to help you drill your third position on your bow staff strikes. It's a weighted bow staff, and it's also a one-size-fits-all training tool. So if you're doing a bow staff class in your school, you've got 15 students, and you have a hard time trying to match everybody up with the right bow size, the Trainer bow is a one-size-fits-all bow that is designed for kids through adults. Obviously, it'll be a little bit more difficult for the kids because it's heavier, but a little bit heavier bow never hurt anybody. So go on to centurymartialarts.com and check out the Century Signature Series weapons today. Now, moving on into story time, and I know we're running a little bit long on this podcast, so I'll try to be a little bit more brief. But because, this is the end of the season, Super Grands is going on right now. This is where World Championships are being decided. I wanted to give you guys a quick little story about the first World Championship I ever won. I mentioned going to the WKA World Championships in 2008 in Orlando, and this is where I won my very first World Championship ever. And it's another testament to always believing in yourself and believing that you can achieve the goals that you set your sights on. Keep in mind that in 2008, I had made stage on NASCA once. I made stage at the Diamond Nationals for traditional forms. I had never done a bow staff form on stage in 2008. But I wanted to win a world championship in bow. So I go to the WKA World Championships in Orlando, Florida, held at the ESPN Wide World of Sports. And the WKA, especially the weapons division, had been dominated by the Canadian team. The Canadian team had been killing it for years in that division. Like, an American had not won that division in at least 5 or 6 years. And it turns out that the medal round actually came down to me and 3 Canadians. So the way the WKA works, or the way that it worked back then, was everybody competes in a big division that's like the elimination round, and whoever places top 4 wind up getting to compete in the medal round. Now, I actually bobbled in my elimination round for weapons with music, which is, as NASCA people know it as musical weapons, obviously. So in the musical weapons division, I had actually bobbled and just barely made it in with 4th place in the elimination round. And then we go on to the medal round, and it's me and 3 Canadians, 2 bow staff guys and a sword guy. And so we run our forms, we get our scores, and it turns out that me and 2 of the Canadians, so me and the other 2 Canadian bow staff practitioners, tied for the gold medal. So now, not only did I make it to the medal round, but now I have tied for the gold medal with 2 people that had been the gold and silver medalists at this event for years and years before that in this exact division. And so we've run this division again. I hit, at that point in my life, what had been the form of my life, hit everything clean just the way that I wanted to, and fortunately I wind up winning my first world championship for Team USA on American soil. And that was just an awesome moment. I won. I cried like a baby. That was probably the first time that I ever cried about a karate tournament. I still remember like getting in the car and just having that realization of like, I did it. Like, I'm a world champion. Like, I just did that with a bow in my hand. And so I cried like a baby. I called Lauren, who was my coach, crying. And then I still remember to this day standing on that podium with the American flag draped over my shoulders and listening to the national anthem that first time I won a world championship. And that's something that was truly special. And now we're going to get into tournament talk, which is going to be real brief. I know that Super Grands has either just happened or is still happening at the time this is going to be released. So congratulations to those of you that have become Super Grands world champions so far. That's awesome. I want to be able to make it out to Super Grands one year. The timing is just never any good with it being in the NASCAR off season. And we just had Christmas and New Year's and everything else. But anyway. Congratulations to all those that have been at Super Grands and have been doing well at Super Grands. And for tournament talk, I also wanted to discuss where should you be in preparation for the NASCAR season. We have the AKA Warrior Cup, the first NASCAR tournament of the 2020 season coming up here in just a few weeks. Where should you be in your preparation for that? In my opinion, your form should the new season should be completed or almost completed at this point. If they're not, that's okay. You still have time. But within the next week, you want to make sure that you're getting those forms done so that you can get plenty of reps. In order to compete at your highest level, when you get out there and you step into the ring at Warrior Cup, you've got to make sure that you've got as many reps as you can get in to make sure you're hitting all those tricks, not only as clean as you want them to be with the right timing, with the right consistency, so that you're like a well-oiled machine when you go out there and you step on the mat. And another thing that I highly recommend going into the first tournament of a season is have 2 or 3 different versions of your form planned ahead of time. A version with a couple less tricks, a version with a couple more tricks. You never know what your competitors are going to have been working on, and you never know what your judges are going to like or not like. A lot of people compete in multiple CMX divisions on NASCAR. So if you run your creative weapons division and you did something new and the judges maybe gave you some low scores, then maybe have another version of the form where you go back to something tried and true that you know the judges tend to like a little bit more. So have options when you go into that first tournament. I always say consistency is not about perfection, it's about adaptability. You've got to be able to react to changes throughout a tournament. You've got to be able to adapt to what your competitors are doing to be able to put the best form out there that has the best chance to win. It's important to be a smart competitor, and a smart competitor is a prepared competitor. And so that is tournament talk, a little shout out to Super Grands, as well as where you should be in preparation for the NASCAR season starting up here in just a few weeks at the AKA Warrior Cup. Thank you all so much. I've been loving the engagement on the podcast so far. You guys are doing a great job responding, putting in comments. Thank you so much for submitting questions for this Q&A. Again, little teaser, in 2020, we're going to be coming at you with interviews. I'm really, really excited about who our first interview guest is going to be. That's going to be announced on social media over the coming weeks after I get some more logistics things figured out. But thank you so much for tuning in. This is Jackson Rudolph signing off of the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I'll see you next time.